Dick the Bruiser didn't do backstage politics. He was the politics, and his policy was pain. Born William Afflis, this guy didn't pretend to be a tough guy. He was a legit street-fighting lunatic who went from football to bar brawls to dropping people on their necks in sold-out armories. In the 1950s through the early 80s, he was the face of Midwestern chaos, especially in Indianapolis and Detroit. He wasn't just a headliner, he was a promoter, a money man, and the stiffest son of a bitch who ever booked himself into a title match mid-bourbon. But behind all the growling promos and chain-smoking rage, Bruiser had a hit list, real heat. People he legit hated, not gimmick heat, not we'll work it out after the house show, but if I see you in catering, I'm throwing coffee in your face heat. This wasn't Hogan refusing to job. This was Dick stomping your face and still expecting you to sell the damn house for him next week. Today, we're not talking about his legendary matches, barbed wire tag wars, or his riot-starting promos. We're going deep into the 5 men Dick the Bruiser hated with his whole blackened heart. No scripts, no kayfabe, just straight shoot venom. And trust me, they earned it. They were called the Crusher and the Bruiser, the original beer and barbed wire tag team. And for a while, it worked. Sold out cards, tag gold, and promos that sounded like 2 construction sites arguing over whose jackhammer was louder. But here's the thing, Dick the Bruiser didn't like equals. He liked control, money, and partners who shut up when the payday got split uneven. Crusher Lisowski? That wasn't him. According to multiple sources including Bleacher Report and regional wrestling records, Crusher wanted more money, more input, and more control over his own schedule. That was Bruiser's red line. He didn't like being told what to book, who to push, or when to loosen his damn wrist tape. What started as chemistry turned into Cold War. By the early 70s, Dick was reportedly stiffing him mid-match, tagging in and throwing shoot punches just to prove who ran the territory. Even when they weren't feuding, the heat lingered. Bruiser co-promoted and booked himself into title runs. Crusher wanted parity. What he got was pain. They were the tag team version of a failed marriage. Only Bruiser hit harder and took both alimonies. Bruiser never trusted a guy who outdrew him and still called him partner. This wasn't betrayal, it was business, and Dick never forgot it. Angelo Poffo had 2 traits that made Dick the Bruiser want to staple his tongue to the mat. He wore glitter, and he brought family into the business. Dick didn't hate showmen, he hated self-made bookers who used the ring like a family barbecue. Poffo ran ICW, a wild outlaw promotion that started bleeding into Indiana, and that was Bruiser's backyard. WWA was his territory. He co-owned it, booked it, headlined it, and treated it like a mob boss guarding his neighborhood. So when Angelo came knocking with his sons and his outlaw circus, that shit went nuclear. Back in the 70s, Poffo would occasionally work AWA, and even step through Bruiser's WWA doors. But things soured quick. Poffo was tight with money, always working angles to get better pay, and worse, he complained when he didn't. According to territory reports and regional historians like Larry Matisek, Dick allegedly stiffed Poffo's pay, and when Angelo took those complaints to the wrong people, Dick froze him out. No pushes, no promo time, nothing but cold, stiff losses in front of half-drunk Indiana crowds. Then came ICW in 1978, Poffo's outlaw promotion featuring Randy and Lanny. They ran head-on into Bruiser's turf. Dick didn't just take offense, he took it personally. To him, Poffo was trying to rewrite the map without paying tribute, and that made him a target. Poffo wore rhinestones like he was Elvis. Bruiser preferred blood. It sparkled better under the lights. He brought his sons into the business. Dick wanted to book them all into early retirement. This wasn't wrestling politics. This was territorial warfare, and Dick didn't lose turf. He burned it before he shared. Let's make one thing clear. Bobo Brazil was a damn legend. He broke color barriers, packed arenas, and dropped guys with that cocoa butt before civil rights were even a suggestion. But to Dick the Bruiser, Bobo wasn't a pioneer. He was a problem. A problem that wrestled better than him, drew bigger crowds in Detroit, and didn't give a damn if Dick owned the building. Here's the real issue. Bobo Brazil outdrew Dick in several Midwest cities, especially Detroit and Chicago. When fans chanted for Bobo louder than Bruiser, Dick took it as an insult. According to historical territory records, old-school shoot interviews, and Detroit circuit wrestlers like Sweet Daddy Siki, Bruiser resented every inch of Brazil's popularity. Not just because of the crowd, but because of the color of the crowd. Bobo brought in a black fan base that promoters couldn't ignore. That pissed Dick off. Dick didn't see color, he saw ticket stubs, and Bobo had more of them. Bruiser didn't hate Bobo for being black, He hated him for being better, and that's what made it uglier. Did they work together? Yeah, a lot, but only because the house was strong. Behind the curtain, Bruiser reportedly refused to put Bobo over clean, hated doing long matches with him, and lobbied to keep himself booked stronger. He never talked shit about Brazil in public, but he didn't have to. His booking told the story, and that story said, "Keep him beneath me." They didn't fight over belts, they fought over legacy. And Bruiser never forgave a man who made the crowd cheer louder for someone else. You know what Dick the Bruiser hated more than being told what to do? Being looked down on like he was a half-trained chimp in boots. That's what Lou Thesz did every time they locked eyes. He didn't just think Bruiser was beneath him, he treated him like he tracked mud onto the mat. Thesz was a shooter, legit catch guy. He could hook your arm, roll your leg, and pop your ego like a zit. Bruiser? He was a swinging knuckle sandwich with a crew cut. Their matches drew, but behind the curtain, this wasn't two pros working different styles. This was a lifelong Cold War between a wrestling priest and a chaos demon with a booking sheet. Thesz worked holds, Bruiser worked over your paycheck. Thesz saw the ring as sacred. Bruiser saw it as a bar he hadn't wrecked yet. In his book, Hooker, Thesz barely even mentions Bruiser. That's not oversight, that's deliberate shade. According to territory guys like Rip Hawk and old St. Louis hands, Lou didn't trust Bruiser to wrestle a broomstick, let alone work a 60-minute Broadway. He sure as hell wasn't dropping clean to him in any town that mattered. And Bruiser? He never forgave it. You want real heat? Thesz once told promoters, "He's not a wrestler. He's a brawler with a volume problem." Bruiser's comeback? Lou's the kind of prick who signs his name with a wrist lock. This wasn't respect. It was two wolves sharing the same cage, one with a blueprint, the other with a fucking pipe. And Bruiser would have broken Thesz's neck just to hear the crowd boo about it. If Dick the Bruiser ever smiled backstage, it wasn't because of a good house. It was probably because Freddie Blassie had left the building. These two hated each other with a goddamn fury, and not the fun kind. This was pure, stiff shoot heat, the kind where guys had to be kept in separate locker rooms or someone was leaving with a broken orbital socket. Blassie was a loudmouth, a promo machine, a guy who loved the spotlight and knew how to work a crowd without laying a finger. Bruiser despised that. He didn't just want to outdraw you, he wanted to outbleed you. Blassie, on the other hand, believed you could make a fortune while keeping your face pretty. Dick saw that as fucking cowardice. Blassie brushed his hair. Bruiser brushed his knuckles across your teeth. Blassie walked into a bar. Bruiser walked through it. According to territory veterans and early AWA and the WWA insiders, Bruiser stiffed Blassie on money multiple times, cut his promo time, and made sure every match was short and violent. Not for the fans, but to send a message. When Blassie complained, Bruiser allegedly told him, "You want classy? Go sell shoes." It wasn't just business. Dick resented everything Freddie was. Slick, fast-talking, and over. Worse, Freddie didn't fear him, and Dick needed you to fear him. Bruiser once said backstage, "If I ever catch him without a mic, I'll shut his mouth for good." That's not a promo, that's a threat. And every guy in the room knew he meant it. Classy? Sure, but to Dick the Bruiser, Freddie Blassie was just a loud corpse waiting to happen. Dick the Bruiser never smiled for the camera. He smiled when someone left the ring the hard way, concussed, underpaid, and humiliated. That was his version of a 5-star match. The man didn't just hold grudges, he stacked them like folding chairs in a bingo hall fire hazard. He ran promotions with a bottle in one hand and a booking sheet in the other, stiffed guys for talking too loud, and buried anyone who dared look taller in a promo. He didn't want peace, he wanted dominance. And if you were in the way, he fucking hated you for it. You're not here for fairy tales, you're here for shoot heat and shattered teeth. So smash subscribe, hit like, and ring the bell harder than he rang yours. Because if you think this was brutal, the next one's even worse, and nobody's walking out clean.